Here to talk to you about heat, which is learning target 42. That I can explain the difference between heat absorption on land and on water. So first, what is heat transfer? So heat transfer is the way heat energy is moved from place to place. And there's 3 types that you might remember from 6th grade. And that's radiation, conduction, and convection. So let's look at radiation first. So radiation is the transfer of energy in the form of waves. So one of the main examples of radiation is energy from the sun. So when I think about the sun, I think about the rays of sun, and I think about radiation. Now the sun is really far away, so that energy is transferring through space as a wave, and then it reaches Earth. Next type is conduction. So this is the transfer of heat energy by direct touch. So if we look at this little diagram here, we have a hand holding onto a metal pin, and this is over a candle flame. So the candle flame is going to heat up the metal rod. As the metal rod gets hot, we will be able to feel that heat because we are directly touching the metal rod. The next one is convection. So convection is the transfer of heat energy by differences in density. So warm material and cold material have different densities. So if we look at this diagram on the right, a pot of water being boiled on a stove, the water that's close to the bottom where the flame is, that's going to get hot. So that's going to have a lower density and it's going to rise up. But then it's farther away from the heat, so it's going to cool down and sink back down. And then it gets closer to the flame and heats back up, and it'll rise up, and that cycle will continue. So that cycling is convection. All right, so I'm going to give you a second to see if you can practice this and label the picture with convection, conduction, and radiation. All right, let's look at the hand over here. So this hand is holding on to the handle of this pot, and this handle is red, and that's red to represent that it's hot. And so the hand is touching it. If it's direct touch, that would be conduction. So next, let's look inside of the pot. So inside the pot, we have warm water that's going to rise up. It's going to be further away from the heat, so it's going to cool down and sink. And if it's cycling like that, that's going to be convection. And then the last one, we can see that there's energy just moving through the room by waves. And if it's waves, that would be radiation. So whenever we talk about heat transfer, it always moves from the object that is hotter to the object that is colder. So in the image on the left, the hand is going to be the hot object and the ice is the cold object. So energy from your hand moves into the ice and melts the ice. Then if we think about the image on the right, the toast is going to be the hot object and the butter is the cold object. So energy from the toast moves into the butter and melts the butter. So heat absorption. So heat absorption is the way a material takes in heat energy. So land absorbs and gives off heat differently than water. So land absorbs heat faster, but it also loses heat faster. So the sun's radiation doesn't go deep down into the soil, so the heat enters quickly, but then it also leaves quickly. Where water absorbs heat slower, but then it holds on to the heat longer. So the sun's radiation can shine deep into the water and then hold the heat longer as well. So if you've ever been to a lake in Minnesota, one thing that you will notice is that in the very beginning of June, the lake, the water is still pretty cold, but then in August, it's going to be really nice and warm. And so the main reason there is because after winter, that water is going to take in heat really slowly. So it's going to take a while to heat up. But then by August, it's going to keep holding on to that heat, even though as we go into August and September and stuff and it starts to cool down, the water will hold the heat. So it does take a while to heat up, but then it holds that heat longer. So let's go ahead and practice this. So we have two images. We have water on the left and then sand on the right. So which one is going to heat up faster, the water or the sand? And that would be the sand. So then which one will heat up slower? And that would be the water. So then which one will cool down faster? And that would also be the sand. So remember, the sand is going to heat up fast, but cool down fast. And then which cools slower? That would be the water, because the water will heat up slower, but then it will also cool down slower. All right, so now that we've finished the notes, you're going to go find the summary questions that are in a Google form and answer these three questions. Number 1, how are heat transfer and heat absorption different? Number 2, what are the 3 ways that heat is transferred? And then number 3, how do land and water absorb heat differently?